Imagine you're a German soldier on the Eastern Front in 1943. It's the middle of the night. The sky is black. The forest is silent. Then suddenly, you hear a faint whisper above your head. Not the roar of an engine. Not the scream of a dive bomber. Just a strange rushing sound, like a broom sweeping through the air. Seconds later, explosions tear through your camp. Panic erupts. But by the time you look up, the attackers are gone. German soldiers believed these mysterious pilots were witches. The name stuck. They became known as the Night Witches. But these weren't supernatural beings. They were young women. Teenagers, students, daughters, and dreamers. Flying some of the most outdated aircraft of World War II. And yet they became one of Nazi Germany's most feared enemies. This is the incredible true story of the female pilots who hunted Nazis without a sound. The story begins with a remarkable woman named Marina Raskova. Before the war, Raskova was already famous across the Soviet Union. She was a record-breaking aviator. A national hero. The Soviet equivalent of Amelia Earhart. When Germany launched Operation Barbarossa in June 1941, millions of Soviet citizens rushed to defend their country. Thousands of women volunteered to fly combat missions. Most were rejected. Military leaders believed war was no place for women. But Raskova disagreed. She personally appealed to Soviet leader Joseph Stalin. Eventually, permission was granted. 3 all-female aviation regiments were created. One of them would become legendary. The 588th Night Bomber Regiment. The future Night Witches. The women expected modern warplanes. Instead they received something shocking. Tiny Polikarpov P-2 biplanes. These aircraft were already considered obsolete. They were made mostly of wood and canvas. They looked more like flying school trainers than bombers. Their maximum speed was barely over 90 miles per hour. Many German fighters stalled if they flew that slowly. The aircraft carried minimal bombs. No radar. No armor. No parachutes. Nothing. The pilots joked that if they were hit, they would simply become part of the fireball. Yet these fragile machines possessed one incredible advantage. Stealth. The women trained relentlessly. Day and night. Summer and winter. Temperatures often dropped far below freezing. Their open cockpits offered little protection. Ice formed on goggles. Hands became numb. Faces froze in the wind. Yet they continued flying. Many pilots were only 17 or 18 years old. Most had never experienced combat. Soon they were flying dangerous missions against one of the most powerful armies on Earth. Every night they crossed enemy lines. Every night they risked death. And every night they became more skilled. More daring. More deadly. Their signature tactic was brilliant. As they approached a target, the pilot would cut the engine. Suddenly, silence. The aircraft became a glider. The only sound was wind passing through wooden wings. German soldiers below heard a strange whooshing noise. It sounded eerie, unnatural, almost ghostly. The pilots would glide toward their target, release bombs, then restart the engine and disappear into the darkness. The attacks were small but relentless. Night after night, week after week, month after month. German troops never knew when the next attack would come. Sleep became impossible. Fear became constant. The Night Witches were winning a psychological war. The Germans desperately wanted them stopped. Fighter pilots were ordered to hunt them. But it wasn't easy. The P-2 flew unusually slow. German fighters were designed for speed. Pilots often overshot their targets. Some fighters even stalled while trying to engage them. Anti-aircraft guns filled the sky with fire. Searchlights swept through the darkness. Many Night Witches never returned. Friends disappeared overnight. Aircraft crashed in flames. Yet survivors continued flying. Every loss strengthened their determination. Many completed hundreds of combat missions. Some flew several missions in a single night. Again. And again. And again. Soon stories spread throughout the German army. Soldiers whispered about ghost pilots. Invisible attackers. Women who appeared from nowhere. The Germans gave them a nickname. Nachtwechseln. Night Witches. It was meant as an insult. Instead it became a badge of honor. German troops feared hearing the sound of wind overhead. Because they knew what came next. Bombs. Fire. Chaos. The Night Witches had become legends. Not because of their aircraft. Not because of advanced technology. But because of courage. By the end of the war, the Night Witches had flown more than 23,000 combat missions. They dropped thousands of tons of bombs. Many received the Soviet Union's highest military honors. Others never lived to see victory. But their achievements changed history. They proved women could serve in combat aviation. They shattered stereotypes. And they earned the respect of friend and foe alike. Today, the Night Witches remain one of the most extraordinary aviation units ever created. Behind every Night Witch was a young woman carrying fears, hopes, and dreams into the darkness. Many were barely out of high school when the war began. Some had dreamed of becoming teachers. Others wanted to be engineers, doctors, or professional pilots. Instead, war forced them into a different future. Every mission could be their last. Before takeoff, many wrote letters home. Some carried family photographs tucked inside their uniforms. Others carried small lucky charms given by parents or friends. These tiny reminders of home helped them face the terrifying reality of combat. Life on their airfields was far from glamorous. The women often slept in simple tents or crude wooden huts. Food was limited. Supplies were scarce. Uniforms were usually designed for men and often didn't fit properly. When aircraft returned damaged, mechanics worked through the night repairing them before the next mission. Everyone understood that failure could cost lives. The bond between the pilots became incredibly strong. They weren't just squadron mates. They became sisters. They celebrated together, laughed together, and mourned together. Whenever a plane failed to return, an empty place appeared at breakfast the next morning. No one needed to ask what had happened. The silence said everything. One pilot later recalled that the hardest part wasn't facing enemy fire. It was losing friends. Friends who had shared meals, stories, and dreams only hours before. Yet despite the losses, the women refused to quit. Each mission became a promise to those who never came back. As the Soviet army pushed westward, the Night Witches followed. They flew missions over the Caucasus Mountains. They supported battles in Crimea. They attacked German positions during the massive Soviet offensives that eventually drove Nazi forces back toward Germany. The war that had once threatened Moscow was now moving toward Berlin. The Night Witches were there every step of the way. By 1945, many of these young women had become highly experienced combat veterans. Some had flown hundreds of missions. A few had flown nearly 1,000. Their courage earned respect across the Soviet military. Commanders who had once doubted female aviators now praised their effectiveness. Even German soldiers who fought against them acknowledged their determination. The Night Witches had proven something extraordinary. Courage had nothing to do with gender. Skill had nothing to do with gender. The willingness to face danger night after night belonged to anyone brave enough to climb into the cockpit. When victory finally came in May 1945, celebrations erupted across Europe. For the Night Witches, the moment was bittersweet. The war was over. But many of their closest friends were gone forever. Their victory had come at a terrible price. Yet their legacy survived. Decades later, historians would look back on the Night Witches as one of the most unique air units in military history. Not because they had the fastest planes. Not because they carried the biggest bombs. But because they achieved the impossible with almost nothing. Wooden aircraft, minimal equipment, relentless determination, and a courage that refused to surrender. Their story remains a reminder that sometimes the most powerful weapon in war isn't technology. It's the people willing to use it. They flew aircraft made of wood and canvas. They faced enemy fighters, anti-aircraft guns, and freezing nights. They had no armor, no parachutes, and little chance of survival. Yet they kept flying, again and again, until even the Nazis feared the sound of silence itself. The Night Witches weren't mythical creatures. They were real women, and their courage made them immortal. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let me know which unbelievable World War II aviation story you'd like to hear next.